Welcome to another episode of the Completely Cricket Podcast. Today we've got an exciting lineup of things to talk about. We're going to start with the IPL. We're going to talk about the most recent match in the IPL, DC versus MI. It was sort of a decider for fourth place. RCB needed Delhi Capitals to lose to boost their hopes, and Delhi Capitals needed to win to make sure they could qualify. So this is a very important match. We're not going to spend too much time on that. Then we're going to go on to the real interesting part, which is the playoffs. That's going to be starting next week. The first match is on Tuesday, and that's Gujarat Titans versus Rajasthan Royals. So that's first place and second place. Surprisingly, Lucknow Super Giants weren't second, even though they'd held second place for like pretty much the entire IPL. They were in the top two. So we're going to talk about, their form, how they've been this season, and the key players who probably will have a big impact on the match. Then we're going to go on to Lucknow Super Giants versus Royal Challengers Bangalore, which is the second match in the qualifiers, and whoever loses that is eliminated straight away. And the team that wins that will play the loser of the first match. We're going to do the same thing, talk about form, key players, and how the seasons have been in general. Then in our second segment, it's going to be about English cricket as usual. This time, there's actually more announcements have been made, including Matthew Mott, who was the Australia women's head coach and who's been renowned for helping with the success of the Australian women team in the Test format, ODI and T20. He's been announced as the England men's ODI and T20 head coach. He wasn't really most famous of head coaches and wasn't really the most famous in the list of people who could have been. And we mentioned a few last episode. You can have a look at that. That should be in the description. But he has been announced, and he's very successful. We're going to talk about what he brings to the table and the whole process of adjusting from women's cricket to men's cricket, because there is an adjustment to make. And then finally, we will be talking about England's 13-man squad for the New Zealand versus England Test series that will be starting start of June. Their squad has been announced already, and it's 13-man squad. There are some interesting people who've been left out, and there have been some who have been featured who many might have expected not to featured. We're going to talk about the bowling department, when there's been a lot of pace bowlers been injured. Actually, 6 England pace bowlers have been injured. So it's a lot to talk about this episode. But anyway, without further ado, I think let's get straight into it and let's get started. So, IPL, the last couple of months has been a load of matches, pretty much a match every single day, even 2 on a Saturday and a Sunday. So there's been matches have been flowing thick and fast. And for us, we're going to focus on one match today, in more specifically, and that was the match yesterday, which was Delhi Capitals versus Mumbai Indians. And by yesterday, I mean the 21st of May. Zay, could you give us a brief summary on the match? What happened? Any key performances?
Yeah, so Delhi Capitals batted first, and they put on a respectable 159 for 7 in 20 overs. A little bit under par, but that's it's a decent score on a pitch that was normally at the ground is good for fast bowlers. There's lots of pace and bounce on the wicket, but this wicket it was pretty slow, and it was staying pretty low, and so Delhi posted a decent score of 159. Then Mumbai Indians came on. It got a little bit close in the end, but a couple of interesting points in the match, and Mumbai Indians ended up winning. They got to 160 for 5 in 19.1 overs, and they won by 5 wickets with 5 balls to go. As you mentioned, Delhi, they needed to win to qualify, and RCB obviously they needed Delhi to lose, and MI just playing for pride and just to spoil some teams' chances of qualifying. So an interesting performance I would like to highlight is Jasprit Bumrah. He bowled. He got figures of 3 for 25 in his 4 overs, so very economical. And he got 3 wickets as well. And he bowled a very consistent stump line. As I mentioned, the pitch was pretty slow, unlike normally, and it was staying pretty low. So if you bowl on the stumps, obviously it's going to be harder for batsmen to score. So he did that very consistently, and it paid off. He had an excellent night that day.
Yeah, I think anyone who's a Mumbai Indian fan or just an India fan in general will be looking at Jasprit Bumrah's figures and generally how he's done in the IPL this season, being a little bit disappointed, to be fair. Like, he's not been up to standards. I think he's taken somewhere around 15 or so wickets, and he's not been in the top wicket takers. I can tell you that for sure. He's not in the top 3, for example. He usually is somewhere nearby, and That's partially, I think, because he hasn't really had good bowlers around him to work with. The best, I'd say, other bowler except for him is probably like Daniel Sams. Even he's been expensive. Like with Jasprit Bumrah and Trent Bolt last season, the way it worked was, if whoever opened, the other bowler would also put pressure on, which meant that pressure created wickets. There's like wickets would come quickly just because both bowlers are in sync and both creating pressure. But when you've got one bowler like Jasprit Bumrah like bowling really well, and then you've got the bowler on the other end just getting slogged, it's just not, batsmen are really happy just to play out Jasprit Bumrah and then, smash every other bowler and they score big totals. Whereas, like, that means that Jasprit Bumrah is realistically not going to get many wickets. So I think if a Mumbai needs to get a good, strike partner with him at the top of the bowling, then I think he can, Jasprit Bumrah can be, even better than this season for the next season, get back up to those, 20, 25, 30 wickets a season. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, definitely. As a excellent bowler like Bumrah, he's been one of the main bowlers for India. You obviously want to have bowlers around you that can, support you and keep the pressure on. Sometimes you bowl a very good over, and then at the other end, the other bowler's just getting slogged, and then in the end, it doesn't really look like you created any pressure, even though you have. And yeah, Bumrah, last year with Trent Bolt, and previous years as well, both of them they supported each other and they were able to put on some excellent pressure. The other teams are really struggling to face them, and just this year it's kind of been like Bumrah bowls one great over, but then the batsman just get away with the other over. So I definitely think that's fair. Bumrah wants someone who can help him at the other end, and even besides that, he's still done pretty well this year, considering that. So yeah, it's been a good season for him, and hopefully he can. There can be another bowler, in the coming seasons to support him at the top.
Yeah, I just think Mumbai Indians team of like the last 3-4 years has just been incredible because they've had every base covered, and then now that's all disrupted. Half their team have gone and played for other franchises now. They've just not had that cohesion as much as they had the last couple of seasons. But yeah, regardless of that, apart from Jasprit Bumrah, I think Tim David was another good performer. 34 off 11. He actually could have been out quite early. We're going to talk about that. I think it was an edge, and so he after that decision, he actually went on and hit 2 4s, 4 6s, absolutely strong innings, and he's scoring very quickly. And it's something that we've seen quite a lot with Tim David this season. Zaid, you've talked about him quite a bit in this season, in this IPL, and MI's not the use of him and how he's not been used properly, and like he's been left out. Do you think MI selectors are finally convinced, Tim David is a key part of their team for next year and the year after, and that they should be playing him as like number 5 role?
Definitely. As I've mentioned before, I was very confused why sometimes he's in the team, sometimes he's left out, because this match really sums it up. Really, you know exactly what he's there for. He's there to come in at number 6 role, number 5 or something like that, and just come in and whack it. And yeah, he that's exactly what he did yesterday, and he demolished really the Delhi Capitals bowling, and he hit 4 6s, as he said. And I just think I think they're paying a lot of money for him as well. So if they're doing that, then why are you not playing him in every single match? But we talked about that last time. So I just think now I'm sure they must be convinced by now. It's the end of season now, so they must be convinced by now that yes, Tim David should be a permanent role in the team, and he can do something like what Kieran Pollard used to do. Something he still does it. And it just had there to absolutely whack it. He could be kind of like a few years ago, last few seasons we had Kieran Pollard and Hardik Pandya together. They would be at the back end of the innings absolutely whack it. Because Hardik Pandya's gone now. Tim David could fill in for that and support Kieran Pollard to do some late slogging. That's what I really want to see, and we want to see him do. So I'm sure MI will be thinking about next season and future seasons, and definitely have Tim David in that 11.
Yeah, I think that's true. I think we should go on to talk a little bit more about the DRS decision with Rishabh Pant and Tim David. So could you just give us an explanation about what actually happened, and any thoughts about that?
Yeah, so the ball was bowled, and Tim David he tried to drive it, and he missed it, or in a sense edged it, and Rishabh Pant caught it, and yeah, everyone was, well, Rishabh Pant mainly was appealing quite heavily, and the umpire said no, it's not out, and yeah, they had a chat as usual. That always happens, and in the end, Rishabh Pant, he said he decided not to go for the review, and you know, everyone was shocked, and just a few minutes later we found that there was a pretty big sniff on it, and yeah, the DRS told us that. He said after the match that, quoted by him, "I thought there was something, but everyone standing in the circle was not convinced enough. So I was asking them, should we go up? And at the end, I didn't take the review." So Punt said that, and we see, in the end, we find out that why he didn't go for it. But it's a bit shocking, really. How can there be such a big nick and no one in the circle heard it? And also, I'm questioning if Pant heard it, and if he was sure, then why didn't he just go for it? What about the bowler? I don't know what the bowler was thinking. So it's quite, that for me, that changed the game. Tim David ended up going, as we said, he got 34 of 11, and he just ended up whacking it. So very, very odd decision.
Yeah, because realistically, this was a match that was dictating whether Delhi Capitals would be in the playoffs or not. And they had been always towards the middle of the IPL table, 4th, 5th, 6th. So they had a good shot, and they've just pretty much, that decision pretty much lost it for them. So I think, I just think Pant, being a captain, being a good player, if he thinks something, he should go with it. It's just a poor decision in the end. It's really lost them. And I think Pant will be like looking back at it and thinking, why did I not take it? Regardless, there's not really much you could do now, but it's an interesting thing to think about, because that could have dictated, it could have dictated Delhi Capitals could be playing Lucknow Super Giants, and maybe that might be easier for Lucknow or harder for Lucknow, and maybe Delhi Capitals keep going through. It's just could be a completely different scenario. So it's something to think about. Anyway, we'll go on to like the second part of the IPL segment, and that's the IPL playoffs. And they are here finally. It's been 2 months, and we've only got 4 matches left, I think. Yeah, I think 4 matches. So first we'll start off with the first qualifier. First and second place players, and that's Gujarat Titans and Rajasthan Royals respectively. Let's start off with how their season's been. Say, if you could sum up Rajasthan Royals season in a couple of words, what would you say?
For me, it would just be inconsistent. I mean, they have looked, pretty unbeatable at times, especially at the beginning of the season with Josh Butler absolutely killing the bowlers and everything. He was scoring hundreds, he was getting 50s, he was doing everything. And then, he's been a little inconsistent near the end of the group stages. So yeah, it's been a bit inconsistent. We have mentioned before that sometimes it's just, if Josh Butler is struggling, then Rajasthan Royals are also struggling, and that's not a good thing. And Rajasthan Royals are a great team, but it's just, I think their batting really has just been a bit vulnerable at times. Just Josh Butler, they've got to find something apart from Josh Butler. Something like Samson. We all know he's good, but if he can do something like Butler, he can come in and get big runs. That would be excellent for Rajasthan. And it just can't just be one batsman who's doing everything, and that's the whole reason why I think it's been a bit inconsistent this season, because one batsman, if he's good, obviously Josh Butler's very good, but you can't guarantee that they're going to be able to perform every single match. That's not possible. So yeah, that's the only concern really for me with Rajasthan. But apart from that, their bowling's pretty good. I think they've been a pretty good team so far.
Yeah, if we look at their top 4, for example, you've got Jaiswal, Josh Butler, Sanju Samson, David Padikkal. There we go. You've got 2, or you could count Samson as well, 3 relatively, not the best, they won't be able to, 3 batsmen who aren't the most experienced, won't score, 500 runs consistently in IPL season. So they're like, it's, for example, David Warner is an example of a really consistent player, but they can't do that. So your reliance is purely on Josh Butler, who everyone knows can be consistent. So the pressure's on him. When he doesn't score, you've got to have one of those, other 3 players to take the mantle. You've seen Sanju Samson do it once. You've seen Jaiswal do it once. He scored 60 off 44 when Rajasthan played CSK. But Padikkal hasn't done it at all this season, really. So then the pressure becomes on the middle order, and then you have to, we're pretty Rajasthan Royals pretty much resorting to people like Ravi Chandran Ashwin to score runs, score 50s, 40s, and that's slightly worrying for me. They're lucky they've got through, but without players like Ravi Chandran Ashwin, I'm pretty sure Rajasthan will be like fourth at the moment in the IPL, or even might not even qualify. They've just haven't been, when Josh Butler's fit and firing and he's scoring loads, then they're happy. But then when he's not, you see the proper weaknesses. So all in all, I think the batting is for them. Forget their bowling's actually very good. I think this with the spinners, Chahal, Trent Bolt, they've got a really good bowling attack. But if your batting doesn't score enough runs, it doesn't make a difference how good your bowling attack is. It's just going to be really hard to win. So yeah, Gujarat Titans. You could say they've had a pretty interesting season. They were very, very impressive for the first half of the season. I think they lost like only once or twice, and they continued winning like an 8 or 9 run match winning streak. Then they sort of faded away towards the last 5 matches. Out of all the teams in the top 6, they have the worst form in the last 5 matches. That pretty much tells you something, because there's some teams that are in the top 6 that aren't actually very good. Obviously, 2 teams that didn't qualify for the playoffs. So for me, I think it's their batting. I just think that their bowling's always been good. It's always been good. Even when bowlers aren't in form, they've just generally managed to hold. They've managed to control teams like, for example, Mumbai or CSK in previous seasons. But their batting has been questionable. They haven't really got a distinct top order. What would you say if you were to pick apart their batting? Would you say there's only a couple of key players that could be the issue, Zaid?
Well, as you said, the first half of the season they were absolutely incredible. I think they played 7 games and they only lost 1 match, which was excellent. And they were looking like they were going to storm through to the playoffs. Obviously, they did come first in the end, but still, they weren't too far from Rajasthan. It's just, I think, a key player like Hardik Pandya, the captain. He batted at 4 in the entire most of the season. He looked very good first half of the season. He's got lots of runs and a new role at number 4. He was bowling a little bit, but mainly his batting. And I think just last few matches he hasn't managed to fire completely, which is obviously you don't want that, but yeah, it happens. That's all right. But ideally it'd be something like you start a bit shaky and then you improve that, and going into the playoffs you're looking much more confident. I think Gujarat Titan, even though they've come first, I think they're looking. I don't think they're one. I don't think they're the best team going into the playoffs. I think perhaps Lucknow or Rajasthan. One of them for me is at the moment looking like they're going to win, because Gujarat they're very good. As you said, the bowling is excellent, the batting is good as well. But they're just, I don't think they're in form at the moment. It's just something they need to look at. Um, for last game, their qualifier. They have got another chance, even if they lose. That's obviously a great thing. They're in the top 2, so if they lose, they still get a second chance, so they have time. But they just got to. They're just not really informed, so they've got to build up the confidence. Maybe play a couple of practice matches in their training. So yeah, I think main player for me is Pandya.
Yeah, I think you're right about the form thing. With any tournament, you need to be in good form coming into the semis, finals, because that just gives you confidence. And yeah, for me, Lucknow in terms of form, and I've pretty much said that throughout the entire season that Lucknow would be my favourites. But obviously they've had some shaky things. We're going to talk about them in a bit, but they are in the best form at the moment. So I think they'll probably be strongest off to play in the semis and finals. Let us go on to the second match, which is this is an eliminator. So whoever loses this will be out. Lucknow Super Giants versus RCB. Before we even talk about their seasons, Zaid, just quickly, who would you say, if you just look at both teams, look how they played in the last couple of matches, who would you say is best chance of winning?
I mean, immediately I'm saying Lucknow, because RCB, they've looked pretty shaky and they started pretty well. That's been with a lot of teams actually. They start pretty well and they fade away. And RCB, they had a couple. It's in the middle somewhere. They had a couple of poor performances, especially with their batting. They were bowled out for 60 and then 100 the next game. So not good at all. So I think Lucknow, they've looked very good. Rahul, Kavinta de Kock at the top, excellent batting combination. I think Lucknow, they just look very good the entire season. They lose maybe 1 or 2 games, but they come back straight away, which is exactly what you want as a team. So Lucknow in form. RCB just a little bit looking. I don't think they have much confidence, especially with their batting at the moment. So for me, it's got to be Lucknow that are going to win.
Yeah. Lucknow's most recent match, 210 for 0, they scored batting first. They did not lose a single wicket in 120 balls. And they even started accelerating because they were going like 7-8 runs and over by over 12. Then they ridiculously started accelerating. You'd expect wickets to fall when you start smashing the ball all over the ground, but they just did not lose a wicket. And it's testament to, Quinton de Kock 140 not out off 70 and KL Rahul 68 not out of 51. Two good innings. And for me, I think Lucknow Super Giants, LSG are pretty much the opposite of Gujarat Titans in one aspect, which is their batting in terms of like if you look at the top five, you've got second and third in terms of runs scored is KL Rahul and Quinton de Kock. You've got Josh Butler, first Rajasthan Royals, fourth Faf du Plessis, Royal Challengers. Gujarat Titans don't have anyone in that top five, nor do nor do Royal Challengers have Faf du Plessis. But the one team that doesn't have anyone in that top five is Gujarat Titans. And Lucknow Super Giants have underlined how good of a team they are through their batting. So regardless of whether they're bowling fast or not, they've got at least 2 or 3 dependable batsmen plus 3 batsmen who can smash. So that's what you want for a team. In terms of how their season's been, Lucknow have always been like in contention to finish top, and like they've from the first, you always knew they were going to be a good team, but they haven't. No teams really look strong at all times. I went with Lucknow, one of the good teams that haven't faded away at the end of the season. They have been patchy, but that's just because that's just generally how it is in the IPL. So I'm happy. I'd say from a Lucknow perspective, they've avoided the drop at the end, so they've done pretty well. How do you say RCB's form have been?
No, it's difficult because I don't think there's been great at all. To be fair, RCB, they won. I think the last 5 games they won three out of 5, but still, they had some. Basically, I think that the ones that they lost were just a bit like they lost quite massively, and the ones they won, they just won. That's fine, but it's just the ones they lost. They won they lost quite heavily, which is not good at all. So it was just, I think RCB they won't be like completely worried going into this into the eliminator, but they're coming up against a very good side, Lucknow, who have looked very good throughout the whole season. So RCB, they've got to be very, they've got to be on top of their game. They've got to make sure that, Faf du Plessis, Virat Kohli, these guys have got to score runs, because if they don't score runs, then RCB are in a lot of trouble. Their bowling, obviously, as usual, the bowling's got to be on the money. They've got to be got a good line, and then spinners, Hasaranga, he's good. He's got to do what he's doing anyway. That's good. But, I think in terms of form, they've looked 50-50 towards the end, really. I don't think, it hasn't been a superb. It hasn't been awful either. So I think it's overall it's been like this. RCB started excellently, and then throughout the middle they looked not good at all, and then near the end they brought it slightly back up, and they're looking okay at the moment.
Yeah, we've got to give some credit to them, obviously, because they've finished off well. They've put themselves in top 4, but they've never looked confident of being in the top 4. You can say Lucknow, Gujarat guaranteed top 4 after the first 5 matches. You can look at them. Obviously, they have an advantage with the the whole mega auction thing. We've talked about that before, whether it's fair or not, and things like that. That episode should be appearing on your screen as well. But that it's they've had an advantage. It doesn't really make a difference because the season starts. So then third, Rajasthan Royals, Rajasthan Royals second in the end, but Rajasthan Royals also always look like, just because of Josh Butler's, amazing run scoring and that period, a lot of winning for Rajasthan have also looked guaranteed. So fourth place is the one that's been up for grabs. There've been 3 or 4 teams who have really been involved in it, which is RCB, Delhi Capitals, and Punjab Kings, and maybe KKR, but not really. So three teams you could say are really involved in it. And RCB have not been top, consistently in the 4. They've been lucky with other teams losing, and now they've pulled it back. So they've done well. But for me, Lucknow Super Giants should be winning this. If they don't, it'll be a bad season for them, realistically, because it's not a hard match to win. To look how fragile RCB's batting are. Faf du Plessis has scored runs at periods. He scored big runs, but he's not been consistent enough either. Been quite sporadic. Dinesh Karthik's done well as well, but he's at a finishing role, normally coming in 6-7. They have promoted him up to 5 a couple of times, but that was at the end just because they needed a few runs. They wanted to finish off. So you don't really have a proper batsman. Virat Kohli did score like a few runs as well. I think around 70 odd. But yeah, that's the one time he scored some good runs. Can he keep it up? That's a good question. I think that'll be really important as well. So yeah, overall, I think we could expect I think we can expect RCB to be eliminated. Gujarat Titans versus Rajasthan Royals. Did you have a winner, Zaid?
That's a really difficult one. I think both of them are looking pretty good. I think I'm gonna go with Gujarat Titans. I just think overall, I think they're the slightly better team. And again, if Butler doesn't manage to score many runs, I think it'll be definitely in favor of Gujarat Titans.
Yeah, no, and then so that means that the second qualifier would be Rajasthan Royals versus Lucknow, and that could go either way. I think that's really quite an even match. So we can't really predict too much, but we've just talked about who we think's gonna win these two qualifiers, and also how they've been doing so far. It's important to look at it. I think we'll do an episode next week on just finishing, because obviously the IPL will be finished next week. We're going to look at in more detail about each season, the top players and stuff like that. Something interesting just to see, and look at we might look at like the results and all the stats through the whole season, which I think that would be